Yeah. Hi, all of you. Good morning. Online, offline. Good morning. Am I streaming fine? Online students? Yes. Okay. Great. Biological production is the total amount of biomass. Biological productivity is the rate of growth. It's something like the speed of a moving body and acceleration. Okay. So total what has been produced, say 20 kg. And maybe we're adding 2 kg every year. Okay, so the weight now is 10 kg. Year 1. Year 2 it is 12. Year 3 it is 14. Year 4 it is 16. Okay. The production is 10. Production is 12. Production is 14. Production 16. The rate of growth, 2 per year is the productivity. So when I'm saying production, it is the biological or ecological production is the biomass per area. When I say productivity, it is biomass per area per time. It's fine, Anisha? So productivity में वो rate of growth आ जाता है. At what rate is it growing? Yeah, rate of growth in terms of time. So velocity is distance by time, where acceleration is a distance by time per time. That's why it's meter per second square. Yeah, biomass can be measured in terms of kg or biomass in terms of energy. You can convert the weight of the biomass into energy also, in terms of calories also. Anisha, so एक ही बात है, biomass बोलो या energy बोलो. 1 kg of rice can be equal to some amount of calories. You can convert. This is the pattern, Gyan Ranjan. Areas which have high biodiversity also have high productivity. That's the pattern. Wherever we have got more life forms, more variations of life forms, there the production rate is also very high. Gyana. I'll come to that. Anish, I'll come to that. Okay, quickly revising yesterday's class. So yesterday, under ecosystems concepts, the concept we did yesterday in a bit more elaborate way was, okay, what is the concept of, what is the measure? What is the measure of ecosystems or ecological functioning? Okay, when we say something is a healthy ecosystem, something is a good ecosystem, how do I know that? It's in terms of how it functions, how it works. This functioning thing is measured in terms of biomass. Okay, in the ecosystems working, how much of biological mass is produced? No, Hidayatullah. Productivity of agriculture, usko alag rakho. That is production in terms of unit area. Usme time is not the factor there. Okay? So in ecosystems measure, the biomass is the biological mass the system produces. Okay, that's the measure. And then we said this biomass measurement we can do in two ways. We can measure biomass in terms of biomass per area, which we have called as ecological production, or I can calculate biomass per area per time. इसको बोलते हैं productivity. A time is what gives us productivity. And then I mentioned words like what is primary productivity, what is secondary productivity, what is gross productivity, and what is net productivity. So we are concerned about, so ye terms I believe you understand. What is primary productivity? The rate of growth of the plant biomass. What is secondary productivity? The rate of growth of the fauna or the animals or the consumers' productivity. Okay, so this is the productivity for the autotrophs, and this is the productivity for the heterotrophs. Heterotrophs as in those which are the consumers. Okay, the autotrophs are the producers. So I can have primary production, secondary production. We can have primary productivity, we can have secondary productivity. So I hope these two terms are fine with you. The second was, you must know what is gross production or productivity and what is net production or productivity. So when I say net, it is the total minus the respiration losses, the metabolic and the respiration losses. So the important catch here is the net productivity is what ultimately gets stored in the body. Okay, what the body mass is accumulating as. Otherwise, the rest is lost in terms of either respiration or metabolism, heat energy largely. Right? So gross is the total and net is the total minus losses. So I emphasized in the first class also, don't run after definitions. Okay, because that's not how questions are framed. But know the concepts well. In the summaries that you write, in the synopsis you make sure you have captured the concept properly. That's all. Okay? So I think these two parts are clear. Now our most important concept in ecological studies is, okay, the net primary productivity. This is the most common measure of how thriving, how rich is an ecosystem. So NPP, the net primary productivity, is the most important measure. And then I gave you a list of the ecosystems and the values of NPP. Okay, you have to remember the sequence. So very, okay, productive systems are swamps, marshes, coral reefs, tropical forests. So 2000 grams, okay, per unit area per year. Agriculture is fairly high. about 650 is approximately the productivity of agriculture system. Of course, the variations hoga. You have different for different type of crops, but by large average, agriculture is also fairly high. And then we had a comparison about the oceans. Oceans, because the area is very large. Oceans make up a huge amount of area. So if you divide by area, the productivity of oceans becomes relatively less. So 155, 300 types, yeah, you know the values. So I'll suggest know the sequence at least, because this can be asked, and they have asked once. I mentioned on upwelling zones. So where we have upwelling, where the water from the bottom rises up, okay, there we have got lot of nutrients, okay, lot of chemicals, nutrients. They come from the base of the ocean. So if this is the ocean here, so for some mechanism, the water starts rising. The water starts rising. When the water starts rising, the nutrients, the salts, okay, maybe some type of microorganisms also, they come up here. So this water becomes rich in the nutrients. And if there is enough sunlight or other conditions are favorable, these can become very high production regions. Upwelling zones, I mentioned, along the margins of Antarctica is a very good upwelling zone. Then we have upwelling zones on the tropical eastern waters. Wherever we have those cold currents, some of you probably know those currents. So on the tropical latitudes, so one of you asked me, sir, what is tropical latitudes? Fine. That's the equator. We have two reference lines. This is 23.5 degrees north, 23.5 degrees south. This is called as Tropic of Cancer. This is called as Tropic of Capricorn. Okay. So up to approximately 30 degrees, okay, up to equator, about 30 degrees up to equator, हम इस zone को बोलते हैं, we call this zone as the tropical belt. Tropical belt का main feature क्या है? These areas are relatively warmer areas. They have a relatively lesser, okay, a seasonal contrast of a temperature compared to the temperate mid latitudes. So from 30 approximately up to about 55 or even 60 tak, we call this as temperate latitudes, or we also call this as mid latitudes. So if you compare the tropical zone with this zone, in this part, the seasons have a strong contrast. Winters are really cold, summers can be fairly warm. The difference of temperature between seasons, summer, winter, it's more here. In these latitudes, the difference of temperature, okay, between seasons is less. So tropical areas has a 2 point. One is they're relatively warmer. They receive more sunlight, they're warmer. One. Number two, the seasonal contrast of temperature is less compared to the mid latitudes. So these areas have more warm conditions, they have got good sunlight conditions, and that's why these areas will have higher productivity zones. Or in these tropical areas, the eastern waters. So if I have some land here, say this is a land, this is another land here. Okay. This land on this side, this is the tropical eastern waters. This is the tropical eastern waters. This is the land here. or the west coast of the land in the tropics. The west coast of the land in the tropics. Similarly here, this is the tropical eastern waters. The tropical eastern waters or the west coast of the tropical land. Ek hi baat hai. If you take up land reference, you say it is land's western coast. If you take water reference, you say eastern waters. So these areas have upwelling. These areas have cold currents. Okay, so in terms of productivity, these are important zones. Why only NPP calculated? Hidayatullah, it's common sense, no? You also calculate secondary, but NPP is the primary, plants. If plants are good, animals also will be good. Okay, big deal. So life में इतना टेस्ट देता हूँ, prelims में सिर्फ क्यों prelims टेस्ट मार्क्स लेते हैं? मैं कुछ भी दे दूँ टेस्ट, जो relevant होगा, right? So plants are the most relevant one. They are the producers. They are the ones that produce the food. That's why we consider NPP more important. Why if you say eastern waters, Rajat? आप बोलो आप क्या बोलना चाहोगे? This is the water. Okay. This is what? Is it east of the water or west of the water? Rajat, what else can you say? This is the water here, water reference. For the water, this is east, as simple as that. No, Anisha, agriculture systems have around 650 NPP or 600 NPP. Okay. So going back to our conversation here, I said the most important measure for productivity we take is the net primary productivity. And we had a distinction between the productivity of land systems and the productivity of the marine systems. In general, the marine productivity is low because of the area. You divide by the area. Okay. But in the marine, we have mentioned upwelling zones are very rich zones. In the marine again, coral reefs are very, very powerful productivity areas. Whereas on the land, I gave you a sequence. So my suggestion, you should know these values, ascending, descending type ka. It's nice if you can summarize it for yourself. Okay? Okay, I'm done with this topic. Yes, tell me, what's your doubt? Area से क्या है? No, it's because nutrients. Okay, मैंने किसी और एरिया में उतना ही, किसी और लोकेशन में उतना ही एरिया का करो कंपेयर, तब इससे ज्यादा ही होगा. The nutrients is the main reason. Okay, fine. So productivity, we are done. We had a small discussion. It was a main type of conversation. What is green accounting? So if you ask this to me, so essentially, this is an exercise to ensure that we also account for our ecological and biological wealth. What makes a country rich is not simply how much money the country has. What makes an economy powerful is not simply the production systems in terms of industries, services. So there is an effort by the UN that says, let us start adding our environmental resources also. Let's start adding our biological resources, ecological functioning. Let's talk about assigning monetary values to our nature also. Because nature also is ultimately the wealth. The food that you eat comes from nature. A lot of medicine comes from the nature. The health of the water systems is because of the nature. Okay, the air we breathe, etc., wo bhi nature hai. So yes, this was an effort that said, let us start accounting for the wealth of the nature also. और शुरू कैसे होता है? We realize that ecosystems are important. Because they're important, we said, let us have an environmental assessment done for it. From the assessment, we gave an idea called as ecosystem services. Now that I have the services, okay, we said, let us put some economic value. The project called as T took off. Once I have the economics of the ecosystems, now we say, let us try to account the ecological values into our GDP, start accounting also in our books of a country's economy. That's how the whole thing has evolved. Starting with the realization, yes, ecosystems are important. Okay, then the UN in 2000 comes up with the assessment reports. Okay, by this we able to develop the idea called ecosystem services. So we have 4 services: provisioning service, we have the supporting services, we have regulating services, and we have cultural. The supporting services eventually were called as habitat, because habitat services. Why? Because the supporting service happens at the scale of the entire habitat. How the nutrient cycle happens, how the soil formations happens, how the gases, the biogeochemical cycles happen. So we said that the supporting services require the entire habitat to operate properly. So supporting services were renamed as habitat services. The rest you know. T project by Germany and the EU, Pawan Sukhdev, the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity, and moved on toward GDP, green GDP. And then we mentioned UN ka jo accounting framework hai, and this was adopted by countries. India also has adopted partly. I gave you one short PIB. Dekha aap logon ne? Okay. It's on your Telegram channel. All of you, see, some of you are asking me, what do we read for environment topics? So my suggestion to all of you is, environment topics are very scattered. There are books, but the books are humongous. Okay, I mean, kul milakar, you have got 10 odd questions, 12 odd questions in the prelims, and 4 plus 2 or 3 plus 2, 4 questions in the mains. Okay, for these questions, I would recommend that you read one entire book. 400-500 page ka zarurat nahi. And lot of environment is current affairs, which means you must buy some book every year. Isse acha hai, from the class notes, you strengthen your concepts, and whatever references you must read, I'll give that to you. Okay, so thoda processing pe dhyan rakho. So after every class, I'll post something for you, some article, some news, and so on. Okay? So on the Telegram channel of Edukemy environment, I posted a small summary of what India has done. Okay, the PIB report. I trust PIB a lot. You'll find a lot of my notes are taken from PIB. Okay, PIB, down to earth I refer to some UNDP reports. I do look up, some of the legislative changes. वो इसमें report हो जाता है invariably. ठीक है? So that's about your green accounting. Channel name, Ashish. Shabbir's environment. Okay, my name or Edukemy's name, and type geography environment. Okay. Okay, fine. So ecosystems concepts, I am almost done. A couple of more terms are there. Okay, we are done. In Sundarbans, Uttarakhand introduced. Deparga, some species, while they may be found in different habitats, the feeding habits are same. So if you take the tiger from the Uttarakhand, say from parts of Jim Corbett, and put them in Sundarbans, it is not as disruptive. Okay, so tiger ecosystems, Sundarbans are Okay, mangrove forests, series of 140 odd islands हैं, but इतना बड़ा disruption नहीं होगा. Okay, but of course, as far as possible, we don't want to do this. Okay, fine. So we moved on towards the concept of biodiversity. I think this is one of the very important topics. Prelims में out of say 12, 14 questions, 3-4 questions are around biodiversity. Either a species or some laws, about some regulations, some programs. Okay? So biodiversity. The first point I said is that biodiversity is a very important aspect of our ecosystem. Biodiversity is the sum total of all the life forms we have. Okay, so yesterday I gave you this sequence. We have individuals, groups of individuals, we call that as populations. A group of populations, we call that as communities. इसमें अगर add कर देते हो the abiotic component, it becomes the ecosystems. Groups of ecosystems you can see as biomes, and groups of biomes. Okay, we have the biosphere. Biosphere is that zone of the earth which has all the life forms. That's how the hierarchy. And find all of this with the ecosystems and biomes. The most important component are the living things. So biodiversity is one of the most important aspects of ecosystem. It is biodiversity that ensures that the ecosystems operate efficiently. Nitrogen cycling happens, the phosphorus cycle happens, the carbon cycle happens, the hydrological cycle happens. It is because of biodiversity that we have soil formation. Because of biodiversity, we will have swamps, ecosystems. So biodiversity is one of the most important concepts of ecosystems, because without this, no ecological niche can operate efficiently. So be prepared for half a page write-up on the significance of biodiversity. All life forms, link the concept of biodiversity to all the ecosystem services. जितने भी services हैं, whether it is the provisioning service or regulating or supporting or cultural, in all of those we have the biosphere, we have the life forms which are operating. So use these keywords like ecological niche, the concept of ecosystem services, dependent on the biodiversity. Then I was discussing what are the types of biodiversity. What are the types of biodiversity? The types, I gave you a list of terms. What is species diversity? What is genetic biodiversity? What is habitat? या फिर ecosystems biodiversity. Then I mentioned the concept of a species richness, almost same as species biodiversity. Then we have the term called as species richness, the species uniqueness. Richness is alpha, uniqueness is beta. And the third one we said is the total habitat, called as the gamma biodiversity. And we had some examples on genetic. In the same species, I can have variations, no? So me and you both are same species, but your gene makeup is different from that of mine. So gene diversity happens when you have got more of those numbers. I want tiger, plus I want lot of tiger. I need lions, and we need lot of lions with all the subspecies and variants we have. Okay, so genetic is part of the bigger species diversity, and we want all of this together. So quickly revising alpha and beta. So what we did was, we said, let's assume a very large ecosystem. In this large ecosystem, there are many communities, the group of life forms living together, trees, insects, birds, maybe small carnivores, herbivores in that area. So in a relatively smaller geographical spread, I can have variety of species. We can have variety of species. In a smaller geographical spread, we can have a variety of species. In a relative smaller, the variations of species. So if I talk about the variation within the community, इसमें comparison नहीं कर रहे हैं. Within this 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is alpha. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alpha is 5 here. 1, 2, 3. Alpha is 3 here. This is the diversity within the community. Then what I do is I compare communities. Say compare 1 and 2. इसमें जो common है हटा दो. Remove the common. Remove the common. Remove the common. Remove the common. Remove this and remove this. जो common हटा दो आप. Then the beta between this and this is 1, 2 and ये भी common है आपका. Fine. So only this is the unique one. Okay. So the beta between this is 1. Only 1. यही बस unique है. Otherwise they are common. The beta between this and this. Okay. So this is there. This is there. This is there. इन दोनों के बीच में we do not have any beta. Between this and this. So remove the common. Whatever are unique in both, we call that as the beta diversity. Okay. So I hope you got the point here. Alpha is within community, beta is across community. Then we said gamma. Now देखो, gamma is a complex concept. To calculate gamma, there are many rules and formula. And the most common rule is something called as a Shannon's rule or Shannon's formula, which I am ignoring. So for now, at our level, what's good enough is the total alpha and beta is gamma. You remember that. Okay. There are some formula equations. We don't need to get in that detail. Fine. Yes, Ashish, you could say that. You could say that. Beta is 0 because between this and this, nothing is unique. Okay. इसमें जो species है, यहाँ पर भी वही species है. That's why, and that's how I marked off. Oh, sorry, between this and this. This and this, there is no uniqueness. Whatever we have here, we also have here, more or less. Oh, I missed out circle. अच्छा, ये वाला unique है. Cross भी unique है. Okay, okay, fine. So this doesn't have unique, but this has unique, correct. So this cross and circle, okay, yeah. Yeah, correct. So in this we don't have uniqueness, but in this we have the cross and circle as unique. So this is 2. You are right, correct. This is beta is 2. Thanks, correct. Yeah, Jayatullah. I missed out studying this one. So you look at uniqueness in both the communities. In this nahi hai, but in this we have 2 unique ones. Gamma is totality, the total of alpha and beta. Okay, I think this is done. Now, I mentioned a term called as species evenness. Evenness is about the relative abundance. Okay. So if the populations are comparable, I've got 1, 2, 3 tigers, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 elephants, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe lion, ये comparable है. In this क्या है? The species are more evenly distributed. But think of another ecosystem. I've got lot of tigers, but maybe only 2 elephants, maybe 1 lion. Now this is not evenness. So when it's evenness, I'm comparing the relative populations across the species, because in these 2 systems, this seems more vulnerable. Okay, so while the alpha is same for both, but because of the imbalance of the numbers, okay, this looks to be more in danger. Okay? So evenness is the relative abundance in an ecosystem. Yeah, it is. Evenness also is within the community, correct. They're well spread out, yes, in that sense. So when we talk about conservation of biodiversity, okay, we talk about all of this together. Okay, now see, I'll help you appreciate one more point. In biodiversity conservation, there are 2 methods we have. One method is what's called as in situ conservation. Other is called as ex situ conservation. What is ex situ? The conservation is not within the natural conditions. So you're keeping life forms in the zoo. You keep life forms maybe in some kind of artificial habitat or in captivity. Maybe you have got gene banks. Okay? And in situ is in the wildlife. In situ is in the conditions which are natural. Aap batao, in ex situ conservation, what type of biodiversity we are able to maintain? Alpha, beta, gamma, evenness, species, what do we maintain in this? In ex situ conservation, or maybe last rephrase, in situ conservation, what do we achieve? Which type of biodiversity, okay, conservation are we achieving in situ conservation? Anybody? I've got 3-4 tigers, 6-7-10 lions, 4-5 elephants. Okay, I'm able to pick up some birds, some reptiles, some amphibians. Evenness? No. Evenness is at the level of the communities. To understand, okay, ex situ conservation, this conservation is at the level of communities and at the level of ecosystems, correct? I'm sorry. In situ conservation, this is at the level of communities and at the level of ecosystems. इसमें हम क्या करते हैं? In ex situ, I pick up the one that I think I need to preserve, or I pick up some sample to have a sense of variety. This conservation, it is actually not proper community. This is actually not a proper ecosystem. Think of a typical zoo. Zoo में कौन सा community है? I've got one enclosure of giraffe. I have a small enclosure of lions. I have a small enclosure of maybe polar bears. In this, there is no community. In this, there is no ecosystem for that matter. All you can do is pick up some varieties of whatever you can. So at the best we manage, okay, to conserve the species, okay, diversity, which is alpha हम कर लेते हैं शायद. Okay. Otherwise, there's no evenness in this. Okay. Uniqueness, because they don't work at communities, हम उसकी बात नहीं कर रहे हैं. There's almost no habitat, okay, conservation here happening. So ex situ conservation at best is, okay, alpha conservation, where the variety is what I try to keep. I hope you got the point here. That is why ex situ conservation is a very inferior form of conservation. Example, I said, no, zoos, zoological parks or botanical gardens, okay, or even those gene banks we have. Test tubes may we have the genes preserved. So if I'm looking at a conservation where the entire range of biodiversity gets covered, it's only possible in situ conservation. So natural parks, biosphere reserves, the wildlife sanctuaries, okay, they are better than ex situ conservation. Okay, so 2 lines likho aap. So every concept I'm trying to map with what is the applied aspect of this. Write down. In situ conservations of life and biodiversity, in situ conservations of life and biodiversity are the most effective forms of ecosystems management. And that's because all aspects of biodiversity, gets addressed. Both at the level of communities, and at the level of ecosystems. Both at the level of communities and at the level of ecosystems. Okay. Next, write down. Ex situ conservation okay, manages to preserve certain specific life forms, and the sense of community or ecosystems are missing. The sense of community or the sense of ecosystem is missing. In ex situ, only some aspect of alpha biodiversity. In ex situ, only some aspects of alpha biodiversity can be preserved, and none of the other forms of biodiversity. See, this is in connection with the recent Forest Conservation Act amendments which were recommended, and the Supreme Court struck that down. We have an act called as Forest Conservation Act. Okay, and this act was amended 2023 May. Okay, and one of the components of the act of amendment was that inside national parks, okay, and the sanctuaries, the zoos will also be considered as a type of forest conservation. आप अगर zoo बना रहे हो उसके अंदर में, they said ये भी माना जाएगा as conservation, which Supreme Court said, okay, this is not correct, because probably the idea was to get private parties into conserving and preserving the zoos. The private parties to maybe start conserving the resorts in the name of animal conservation. So now the Supreme Court, recently this year, 24 May, it has struck down some of the provisions of the Conservation Act. Because zoos and these artificial enclosures, they should not count as, okay, in situ conservation. It is largely maybe tourism, okay, maybe some form of income generation, but it does not really have the ecological significance. Okay, so us context within bracket right now, just mention these points. That this can be seen in reference to This can be seen in the reference to a Forest Conservation Act, in reference to Forest Conservation Act Amendment 2023. Amendment 23 that has been criticized by the Supreme Court, on the provisions like zoos being considered as legitimate conservation initiatives. Zoos as considered as legitimate conservation initiatives within the national parks, and wildlife sanctuaries. It's like, this area is a large national park. It is natural, forests, maybe some mountains, maybe lakes, wetlands, animals are here. So if I say zoo is also accepted, what I can do here is I can enclose an area here, maybe modify the ecosystem here, okay, and put some animals inside this artificially and call this as conservation. Okay, this is what they were criticizing. ये हो नहीं सकता. आपको zoo करना है, आप कहीं और करो, fine. In principle, zoos are the last resort. Zoos are supposed to be, when all else has failed, the animal can't survive in the wild, ठीक है, fine. For a long time, zoos were part of entertainment and recreation. So now we are coming hard on that. The zoos cannot be for good conservation when a natural system exists. क्यों आप एक एरिया को ऐसे घेर दोगे, cut down the trees here, make enclosures here, artificial, you're having enclosures here, and then you put a tiger here, you put a lion here, put a giraffe here, and call this as conservation. Okay, Supreme Court says this is not legitimate conservation. National park को आप natural ही रहने दो. Okay, don't get involved into construction, development. Because when you have this one, somebody will say, okay, fine, zoo अगर है, visit आएंगे, let me have a small restaurant or a hotel here. अब इतने लोग आ रहे हैं, let me make some kind of hotels here where people can stay. That's how the national parks ultimately get encroached. Okay, so we don't want that. We want to keep natural parks as natural as possible. Yeah, within national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. In that context, I'm discussing that in zoos, all you can do is some aspect of alpha you can preserve, not the other aspects of biodiversity. Yes, you're right, Shashi. Zoos also cause habitat fragmentation. Correct, you're right. They break up the continuity of a landscape. Okay? Okay, let's move on now. Now, about those species types, I already have discussed. I'll just sum it up quickly. Species types mein, now you all know what we mean by keystone species, ठीक है? What do I mean by umbrella species? What do I mean by flagship species? Take a small list, please, quickly. I'm just summarizing here and I'll add one or two more terms. Okay. So, keystone species क्या होते हैं? They essentially are the most important to maintain the functioning and structure of the ecosystem. So, they have some a role to play. Okay, so keystone species on the basis of preserving or maintaining the ecosystem functioning, the ecosystem ka structure. Okay, and I said these can be any type of life form. For a long time, most of us may have by hearted and remembered that keystone species are always apex predators. Not necessarily. They can be insects, they can be birds, They can be herbivores and they can also be large carnivores. Okay, yes. So you understand this. You're right. Last afternoon I shared one a comparative chart for all of you on the Telegram channel. What is umbrella species and what is, और एक write up भी लिखा दिया था, मैं दे दिया था मैंने आपको. ठीक है? Yeah, okay. So you understand this. Umbrella is a species that requires a large geographical area, okay, for survival. Because it requires a large geographical area, it indirectly ends up conserving other life forms also. Okay? The main advantage is that this species, and most of these species are migratory ones, or they move. They are large carnivores, so move karenge. So because to preserve a tiger, I need a large habitat. Okay. So by giving the tiger its habitat, I end up preserving indirectly all the other species also. Okay. So umbrella species can be a keystone species also, but not always. And the main difference between these two is, if I remove keystone species, the ecosystem will collapse. But agar keystone nahi hai or sirf umbrella hai, then the ecosystem will not collapse. It will function, but maybe that life form is gone. Okay, so within bracket you can mention this point here. Umbrella species can be keystone species, but not necessarily. Umbrella species can be keystone species, but not necessarily. And the main difference is, removal of umbrella species that are not keystone. Removal of umbrella species that are not keystone species will not lead to the collapse of ecosystems. Will not lead to collapse of ecosystems. इंडिया में टाइगर दोनों हैं. Okay, tiger is umbrella and tiger also is keystone. And the first class I gave you a list also. Examples of keystone, not umbrella. Examples of umbrella, not a keystone. I gave the examples of all of that. Yes, absolutely. Anything that requires a large habitat, okay, is umbrella. Okay, so I think you're done with this one. Flagship kya hai? Now, flagship species essentially are, okay, culturally significant or charismatic species. Okay, they have more of the role of ambassador of an ecosystem, right? So a flagship species helps us, develop awareness. They help us develop, okay, local participation. Let's say if you look at hornbills. Hornbill is a bird found in parts of Meghalaya, Assam, and also found in parts of Western Ghats. Hornbill is a very significant, large bird hai. The local tribes, okay, worship and part of the cultures. But umbrella species nahi hai wo. Okay. But promoting Western Ghats conservation using hornbill, okay, makes the issue a bit more acceptable. The Western Ghats is one type of deer called as, okay, the Nilgiri Thars. Nilgiri Thar is not umbrella, it is not even, okay, a keystone species, but that is representative of that ecosystem. Okay, so flagship species, I said they are more important for messaging. They're more important for messaging. And preferably the larger one, the more majestic one, the more royal looking one, tigers and peacocks and lions, okay, something that catches the imagination of the people. So that's a flagship species, and they may or may not be umbrella or ecosystem or keystone species types. Okay. Now to this I will add two more terms. One is Yateen, please revise on your own. I will add the fourth one called as indicator species. What is an indicator species? Let me explain this to you first. What is the indicator species? Okay. So we also call these as bioindicators. So their presence or absence is a sign about the ecosystem's health and functioning. If it is there and very healthy, it implies maybe ecosystem is doing very well. In some cases, if those life forms are there, means the ecosystem is collapsing. वो भी possible है. It's like an indication something is right or something is wrong. Like say, if the coral reefs are healthy, I know the marine ecosystem is thriving. But if coral reefs are dying and I have the algal bloom, red algal pelgia, red algal is indicative of the system is collapsing. Okay. So they can be either of these. So these are those species which indicate, which tell us that the ecosystems are thriving, healthy, or they are not. You right? Frogs. Frogs ka jo skin hota hai, they can breathe through the skins, or some gaseous interaction happens. So frogs are very susceptible to water or soil which has high toxic levels. Agar zyada toxic metals hain, pollutants hain, the frogs will start dying very quickly. Okay, so we have a certain type of birds also, okay, like owl. If the forest is not dense, the owls will not survive. In particular, one called as a spotted owl. If you see spotted owl, means that area's forest is pretty good. Okay, so there are some species which are important in that sense. Write down. Write down. Indicator species. Indicator species. Okay. Indicator species are reflective of the health of an ecosystem and its working. They are reflective of the health of the ecosystem and its working. Certain type of life forms proliferate, they grow and expand. Certain type of life forms, they proliferate when ecosystems are healthy. When ecosystems are healthy. While some other life forms grow and colonize when the ecosystems are collapsing. Ecosystems are collapsing. Indicator species are important to alert conservationists, about conservation strategies. They alert conservationists about conservation strategies. Take a list, some examples of indicator species. One is lichens, Lichens. Lichens. Lichens are typical associations found in the tundra regions and in areas which are part glacier, part melting. We call those areas as tundra. TUNDA, tundra regions. We also call these as periglacial regions. they are at the periphery of the glacier areas. Okay, tundra regions. So lichens and one type of एक और plant है called as bryophytes. Lichens and bryophytes. Bryophy, bryophytes. एक bryophyte है called as liverworts. Lichens and bryophytes. Bryophytes, one variety is called as liverworts. These are important indicator species of the tundra type of climate. Lichens and bryophytes. Yes, you're right. Lichens is an association of algae and fungi. You're right. Lichen has algae and fungi ka, okay, one type of association. They look like moss. They look like small grasses. Okay, lichen is one. Second one is a cyanophyta. One. Number two, cyanophyta. 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 It's one type of phytoplanktons. एक type का plankton है. One type of plankton. Phytoplankton means like they're like plants. One type of planktons that indicate eutrophication. That indicate eutrophication. I hope you all know what eutrophication is. When the water bodies have, okay, unwanted growth of life forms. So, presence of this tells us eutrophication is setting in. Okay, you can take some measures there. Next slide down. Okay, wood stork, one type of stork or a crane. Wood, S-T-O-R-K. Wood storks. Okay, they are indicators of wetlands and fresh water fish. अगर ज़्यादा woodland storks हैं, mean the wetlands are good. Wetlands are good. Okay. Then we have river otters. One type of something like a cat, you can say, it can swim. River otters. O-T-T-E-R-S. River otters. Again, presence of otters means the water is clean. Water is clean because they survive on a range of life forms. They survive on amphibians, small mammals. They eat invertebrates. Okay, so their feeding habit requires clean waters. So river otters, okay, in fact, river otters are considered as keystone apex predators in river systems. River otters are also considered as keystone apex predators. Keystone apex predators in freshwater habitats. In freshwater habitats. Then I mentioned amphibians like frogs. Amphibians like frogs. They are very vulnerable to chemical pollutants or water toxins. They are very vulnerable to chemical pollutants or water toxins. Okay. Then algal blooms. Algal, A-L-G-A-L, algal bloom, indicator of water pollution. Indicators of water pollution. Okay, so some names that you can know. Okay, fine. Now, indicator species का एक subcategory है called as sentinel species. This is a subcategory of indicator species called as sentinel, S-E-N-T-I-N-E-L, sentinel species. This word means what? Guards. Sentinels are who? The guards. The soldiers are sentinels. Okay. Now see, an indicator species is indicative of the health of the entire ecosystem. Okay. This species is indicative of what harm man might face. Okay, so say something happens and I know my cattle is in danger. Something happens, I know my agriculture crops are in danger. Something happens, I know that I can have some health problems. So if you know the stories about these birds called as canaries, who are canaries? Canaries are very small yellow color birds and they're very susceptible to methane. Methane is a colorless and odorless gas. Okay, and it can impact your health very fast. So when miners used to go inside the mines, there is no way of knowing कि वहाँ पर methane है या नहीं है. It's odorless and colorless and highly inflammable. So imagine if I carry a matchstick and I'll explode. So when miners go down, they used to carry canary birds in a cage. The canary is quiet, sitting quietly means the air is clean. If the canary starts getting restless, then I know there is traces of methane gas. So sentinel species जो हैं, they alert human beings for direct dangers. It's not about ecosystem at large नहीं है. आपको खतरा है. Your life, your health, your agriculture and your cattle. So those can help us take some decisions. Okay. There are two lines here. That subcategory of, I mentioned, indicator species, and they help detect risk for humans. They help detect risk for humans by providing advance warning. By providing advance warning. So within bracket for differentiation, indicator species are relevant for and for alerting at the scale of ecosystem working. Alerting at the scale of ecosystems working. Whereas sentinel species are relevant they are more relevant at the level of human risks. At the level of a human risk. यही फर्क है. So examples of this is, take 1, 2, 3. Number 1 is canary birds. Canary birds. Okay. They are very sensitive to carbon monoxide and methane. Carbon monoxide and methane. And were used by coal miners. Carbon monoxide. Monoxide is also odorless gas. Okay, and methane, and used by coal miners. Number two is cats. Cats. If cats eat a fish which are contaminated by mercury, they develop some kind of disease. Okay, so along the river fronts, cats were kept and fed on the fishes of the river. If cats are reacting and falling sick or dying, which means the river has mercury pollution. Okay, so cats vulnerable and susceptible to mercury contaminated fish. Mercury contaminated fish. Do you know about Minamata disease? Minamata is because of mercury poisoning. So Minamata is actually a bay area in Japan. Okay. So in that area, there was a lot of mercury poisoning. And we have a treaty on mercury poisoning. Okay, Minamata, Minamata. Minamata एक जगह है, Minamata Bay in Japan. It's infamous for mercury poisoning. And the cats were the first one that helped us detect there was a problem. Okay, let's know these names, cats. Then roses. Now in vineyards, they plant roses along the edge of a vineyard. You know what's a vineyard? They grow grapes for wine. So this is a vineyard. This is a vineyard. At the margins of vineyards, at some intervals, they grow rose. They grow rose. They grow rose. And rose is very susceptible to one type of fungus. Agar wo phail gaya, the vineyards can get impacted. So the moment the roses have the fungus first, then the farmers can take corrective actions. Write down. Roses are planted within vineyards and are known to be susceptible to fungus attack and mildew attack. Fungus attack and mildew, M-I-L-D-E-W, mildew attack. Okay. So if you can detect that, you can take actions and your vineyard gets protected. That's about it. So what are indicator species, sentinel species, and I think I also mentioned this one. What are a foundation species? Foundation are the species that build the ecosystem. They are the main builders that build the ecosystem. Okay, and foundation species, they can be plants, which is mostly plants and grasses. Okay, a foundation species can also be corals. They build the ecosystem, corals. एक टाइप का एल्गे है called as kelp, K-E-L-P, underwater kelp forest. Kelp, they grow in cool marine waters. They look like seaweeds. They are something like seaweeds. Kelp grass. Corals are features of tropical warm waters. So corals build the ecosystems in tropical warm waters. Coral जो काम करता है, the kelp does in the mid latitude, in the cooler waters. Kelp forests. Okay. And the foundation species can also be larger mammals. One example we give is beaver. Beavers are also considered as foundation because they modify the ecosystem in some ways. We call these species also as engineer species because they are building the ecosystem. Okay, so for a good ecosystem management, you need some of all of this. You need a good foundation species. You need to have a good keystone species. For conservation decisions, you can have conservation for umbrella species. You need to have an eye for the indicator species. ये सब मिलाकर is what we call as a surrogacy conservation. ये term याद है आपको now? So you cannot identify every species and conserve. But if you take care of these 4-5 types, you take care of 1 or 2 keystone, couple of foundation, some umbrella species, some indicator species, some of them are okay, maybe vulnerable to some conditions. If you can do that, you end up conserving the entire ecosystem. Kelp. Shoria kelp is one type of algae. एक type का algae है. Algae, protists, algae, and they look like seaweeds. They're like long leaves, brownish, greenish color. They look like seaweeds. So kelp forests are again very, very productive ecosystems. We call them as forest. Yeah, underground, they look like forests. So if this is the ocean water here, okay, so kelp forest will have these kind of, okay, seaweeds. It's सब algae है. And between the seaweeds, you'll have fishes, organisms, okay, and all of that together. Okay. So I'm done with this term. Let's move on to one more concept. Take a fresh page. In news mein tha last month. Okay. Otherwise, also you should know. The concept of speciation. The concept of speciation. Okay. Now, it is an evolution. Sun lo pehle, then I'll give you the notes. A speciation is essentially a type of an evolutionary process that creates new species. Okay, so we have something in the nature, or something how the animals live, something how animals or life forms or birds, insects, trees, grasses, plants, they in some way interact, which eventually leads to creation of more and more species. Okay, so that process is called as speciation. Okay, and speciation depends on a host of natural factors. Climate hai, physiography hai, terrain factors are there, and now you also have human factors. Okay, so speciation is the way how life forms evolve and become new species. Okay, now there are primarily three types of speciation. Sun lo pehle, then I'll give you the notes. One is allopatric, allopatric, allopatric speciation. Second is parapatric. The third is sympatric. ये न्यूज में था because last 2 months में IIT Bombay has done some researches, because sympatric, although we knew existed, but we had no evidences. We had no experimental basis to confirm this. ये तो हमें पता था. Okay, this was a question mark. In fact, some said कि शायद होता ही नहीं है. But IIT Bombay, okay, using some mathematical models and simulation techniques, they proved that this is possible. The news mein tha, so I'm adding to this. IIT Bombay. I'll give an article, don't worry. After the class gets over, on the channel, I'll put the article also for you. Read through that if you understand something. Okay. So let me explain. Allopatric kya hai? So imagine this is a large geographical area, and there are some life forms here, and for some reasons this area develops a kind of a barrier. Okay, a mountain aa gaya, maybe some rifting canyon is formed, maybe ocean water, this has now become a small island maybe. So these two same species, but they no longer can interact. Okay, and because of which these species slowly, gradually, over millions of years, they develop some new features, okay, which is different from this type of life forms. Ultimately, the same species has now become two different species. Charles Darwin, he was researching a group of islands called as Galapagos. Galapagos Islands are in Pacific Ocean. They are part of a country called as Ecuador. And Galapagos are volcanic islands, rich in biodiversity. And some of the very old life forms also. Lot of turtles, iguanas, okay, lot of tortoise, something which otherwise not abundantly found in other part of the world. And वहां पर एक type of birds हैं called as finches, F-I-N-C-H, finch. Okay, and we found that ये islands हैं, ये अलग-अलग islands हैं, and oceans separate them. And finches can't fly over big distances. And he found some birds here, and they look very different. Okay, some of them have long beaks, some of them have very short beaks, some of them have beaks only for cutting nuts. And he thought that ye alag-alag birds hain. But then he found they actually are from the same species, but the long beak ones, they have evolved for surviving from flower nectars. The very small beaks, the adaptations to eat worms. A bit more bigger and strong beaks, they feed on nuts. And ultimately, they have become different species. So he said, ye kaise hua hoga? Maybe once upon a time, the islands were all together. Then something happened, they move apart, water enters, and the islands have got separated. And now we find the same species has now become new species. The same way, if you look at in US, you have this area called as the Grand Canyon of Colorado River. Grand Canyon is a massive, deep valley. You can't cross it. So the squirrels found here are different from squirrels found here. So they must have been together, but once the canyon formed, the interaction stopped. And life form which can cross and move across the thing of birds, unme speciation nahi hua, but the squirrels developed into new species. Okay, that's called as allopatric. Allopatric when a new species develop, because a landscape gets fragmented because of barriers. Write down back to your notes. So what is speciation? Speciation is the process. Speciation is the process. Okay. How life forms evolve into new species. How life forms evolve into new species from the same species. From the same species. From the same species. Next, write down. There are three main types of speciation. There are three main types of speciation. Allopatric, A-L-L-O-P-A-T-R-I-C. Allopatric speciation. Parapatric, P-A-R-A. Parapatric speciation. And sympatric, S-Y-M, and sympatric speciation. Yes, you're right. एक और type भी है called as peripatric. Peripatric actually is a type of allopatric. Okay. Within bracket mention this. Okay, you can mention this, no problem. A peripatric, P-E-R-I, is a type of allopatric. Is a type of allopatric. Okay, so likhna chahe likhe, otherwise let's start off. Again, I don't want definitions in this. I just want you to know the terms, current affairs mein tha, and this can be a question. So keep that in your mind. Write down. Allopatric speciation is a process of speciation that operates, is a process of speciation that operates when species get separated, because of some barriers, like large mountains, islands separated by expanse of oceans, or canyons and deep valleys, okay, separating the species. Okay, example, I said Galapagos finch, F-I-N-C-H, Galapagos finch, F-I-N-C-H. Finch is a variety of birds, but unka root species same raha hai. But some of them have developed as all type of beaks, and all of them around some feeding habits. Okay, very long, slender beaks like hummingbirds. Some of them have very short beaks. Some have hard, curved beaks for eating nuts. The finch wala was discovered by Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin discovered allopatric species in finch in Galapagos. Okay, and within bracket mention, Galapagos is a Pacific island. Okay, along equator, belongs to Ecuador. Galapagos is a Pacific island, so this is South America like this. Equator hai yahan par. There's some islands here. Along the equator, these are the Galapagos Islands. They're considered as one of the global biodiversity heritage centers. Itna variety of life forms and very uniquely positioned. Galapagos are considered global biodiversity heritage centers. Yes, India may be as centers. There are about 40 of them in India. I'll give a list afterwards. Okay? Galapagos belongs to a country called as Ecuador. Ecuador country yahan par hai, it belongs to that. That's one example. Another example is squirrels, S-Q-U-I-R-R-E-L-S. S-Q-U-I-R-R-E-L-S. Squirrels on either side of Grand Canyon. On either side of Grand Canyon. Yeah, in the state of Arizona, correct. Aside of Grand Canyon, okay, they have developed into two different species again. Okay, the allopatric is done. The next is parapatric, P-A-R-A, okay, parapatric, P-A-R-A-P-A-T-R-I-C, parapatric. Now listen, what happens parapatric is, it's a very large geographical area and there are no barriers. Okay, animals and plants and insects, okay, they can move, the birds can move. There is no barrier, but ye bahut large hai, because of which the geographical conditions here may be a bit different from the geographical conditions here. Okay, different type of water, a different type of soil, a different type of temperatures maybe. Okay, so originally maybe the same species was here, but slowly, gradually, some members of species, they start evolving according to these conditions. And the life forms here, they start evolving different conditions में the different type of features they develop. And eventually they become two different type of species. So this is marked by the absence of a barrier. So barriers नहीं होता है. ठीक है? Write down. Parapatric. Okay. Speciation happens when a very large geographical region, when a very large geographical region offers different geographical conditions. And even if there are no barriers, the life forms adapt themselves to the local geographical conditions, the local environmental conditions. The life forms adapt themselves to local geographic conditions or local environment conditions. Within bracket, write down, unlike allopathic speciation, there is no geographical barrier for interbreeding. ठीक है? Allopathic में क्या हो रहा है? There is a barrier. Water, mountain, canyon, एक barrier है. These are not able to come here. But in this case, कोई barrier नहीं. They can come if they want to come, but they get adapted to the local conditions. Now, this has been observed in areas where there are minings going on. Say, imagine this is a large area. And some life form lives across. And then we do some mining activity. Mining activities mein, I'm dumping debris, I'm dumping the waste products, I'm dumping chemicals maybe. So because of human activities, this area develops a different type of geographical conditions. Or think of a very large area, urban area hai shayad, and I'm dumping waste in one corner. Okay, landfills hai, plastic waste hai, chemical waste hai, industrial waste hai, fly ash ponds hai, for example. Okay, so eventually what happens, some life form, okay, is evolving very fast, khaskar organisms, bacteria, and they start adapting to this type of conditions where there are pollutants. Okay, and this doesn't have that. So this now becomes another species and this becomes another species. Okay, an example of how does man modify the species evolution. Write down that human activities can dramatically change environmental conditions of a region. Such as by acts like dumping of waste, accumulation of pollutants, that create new and different soil conditions. that encourage new adaptation processes, that encourage new adaptation processes. Nishant, I do not know of that, but if you have read something, yes. Okay, but those are more like genetic problems because of radioactivity. वो evolution नहीं है. Evolution is a bit more slower process. He's asking me where we have this Chernobyl reactor, वहाँ पर कुछ अलग species. Maybe if I've read, fine. Otherwise, that's example of a genetic problem. ये problem नहीं है, ये adaptations हैं. Now, one is, your genes are impacted adversely. So maybe life forms develop some disorders. Disorders is not adaptation. Okay. For यहाँ पर the life forms adapt for new type of feeding habits. So US में they found is one type of grass called as buffalo grass. Buffalo grass has developed adaptations to grow in soil which has lead contamination and arsenic contamination. Okay. So all the other areas have some other grass. The buffalo grass is different from the other grasses there. And it's fairly found across a lot of American locations. Okay. So genetic disorder is not same as speciation. Okay. So in the US, okay, buffalo grass has shown adaptations to survive on soil pollutants like lead, mercury, arsenic and zinc. Lead, mercury, arsenic and zinc. Okay, so that's about parapatric, and this is one example of how man can impact nature. The third one come to sympatric speciation. और ये वाला न्यूज में था. You have to know this one. Now, इसमें क्या होता है? The location is far more smaller. It is not a large geographical area. It's a smaller area, almost same environment conditions, but maybe one life form, because of some food available here, which is not here, the life form starts preferring this type of food. Okay. And important point is, unlike parapatric, area बहुत छोटा area है, इसमें आराम से they can move, interbreed, interact, but they don't. Small area like, maybe this side has a river, and this side there's no river. And because of river, maybe some plants grow here with some type of seeds, जो यहाँ नहीं मिलता है. So that insect can grow here and also grow here. But here that seed starts becoming the preferred food, and they start growing in some ways. Okay, it could be a small area, deserts, and maybe a small oasis here, water body. Because of oasis, maybe some type of conditions are different margins में. Some worms maybe they prefer this condition. They can also survive here, but यहाँ पर they adapt, and they become different from this type. So some considered that this is actually not possible. because इसका हमें ना experimental proof नहीं मिल रहा था. We were trying to simulate it. So they knew it's possible, but experimentally it was not looking viable. So IIT Bombay did some simulations, and they said, no, this is a very much possible technique of speciation. Okay? Write down here. Sympatric speciation happens when life forms or members of same species, members of a same species live in close proximity, live in close proximity, close proximity with no physical barriers, with no physical barriers, and they can intermingle and interbreed. They can intermingle and they can interbreed. But because of choice for different type of foods, because of choice for different type of foods that develops spontaneously, इसका कोई reason नहीं है, that develops spontaneously, new species can evolve from them. New species can evolve from them. So, इसका best example is a researched one. There is something called as apple maggots. A type of flies. Maggots are what? Those larva type. Okay. And the one type of flies. These flies, okay, they grow on apples. Okay. So they're called as apple maggot or apple maggot flies or apple flies. But what happened was, nearby एक और fruit है, is called as hawthorn fruit. Not like apple. But then they found that some of these flies, they preferred hawthorn fruit. And ultimately, these apple flies and hawthorn flies have now become two different species. And they are side by side. They can easily intermingle and interbreed. But it did not happen. The choice was the hawthorn fruit for some flies, and for others it was apple. So example likho aap, example. The speciation between apple flies and hawthorn, Hawthorn, the speciation between apple flies and hawthorn flies was the consequence of food preferences. And write down that sympatric speciation was or has been much debated. Sympatric speciation has been much debated because there are no experimental simulation. There are no experimental or simulation evidences. While scientists thought it is a possibility. ठीक है, इसमें डिबेट था. Write down. IIT Bombay in one of its research has developed a genetic model that proves sympatric speciation as a possibility. That proves sympatric speciation as a possibility. I'll just give you 2-3 terms, okay? You need not know in detail, but some idea because ये काफी news में है. Okay. Now see, in speciation, or I'll say in mating behaviors, in mating behaviors. Okay, so when they have offsprings or when they have, okay, when they lay eggs, the mating behavior mein, there are two possibilities. One is called as, okay, a sexual, okay, a preference based mating. Okay, sexual preference based mating. So you have heard about, birds. Okay, some of the birds, they develop colorful feathers. Okay, they develop a typical type of songs. They have some mating dances, basically to mate with the female of the species. Okay, and that's called as a sexual preference. Okay, the brighter the feathers, the better the colors. Or lions, the bigger lions with more mane and that hair on their head, they kind of attract the partner for mating. Okay. Some said that is this sexual preference only because of looks, right? Something that looks more beautiful, there's something that looks more formidable. So the mating happens for that. The other school says, not looks, it's what's called as disruptive preferences or disruptive speciation. इसमें क्या होता है? The mating happens for that member which has some features that support its survival better. Like say, there are two birds and one bird has a longer beak. The longer beak makes the bird more efficient in maybe picking nectar. So the preference will be for longer beaks. And eventually, when it goes on interbreeding, the beaks become longer through the species evolution. Okay, this is about looks. This is functional in nature. Okay, this is about fitness. Okay, it must serve some purpose. So look at the finch, for example. Okay, in some areas there were more nuts. Okay, and the birds, they develop small, strong beaks to eat the nuts. So when the breeding happens, okay, the preference is for those finch which have stronger beaks. Slowly, gradually, the other type of finch will die out. Okay, so sympatric is because of this one. When you have got a small area and one area has a special condition, okay, so the life forms that have features to survive in that condition, okay, they start multiplying more and ultimately evolve into new species. So IIT Bombay proved that, okay, the speciation is not because of this, it is more because of the disruptive preference in some feeding habits. Okay, so just 2 lines on this. आपको मैं article share, because see UPSC में इतने depth में जाता नहीं है. You must know the names, some idea about that feature, and you're on. Write down that IIT Bombay research concluded that IIT Bombay research in sympatric concluded that disruptive speciation where mating is the consequence of some attribute that helps the life form survive better. Some attribute that helps the life form survive better. And not because of sexual selection based on looks. And not because of sexual selection based on looks. It kind of validates the idea of survival of the fittest. Whichever life form is more fit to survive, whichever life form has more chances to get food, they are more attractive than life forms that have some physical features, okay, like I said, colorful feathers and the rest. Okay, so sympatric is now proved that it is a possible form of speciation. Yeah, I'll share the link, don't worry. वो 2 page का article है. Okay, I'll share the link and you can look into that. Okay, so I'm done with the type of importance of biodiversity, some classification about what are the types of species. The third is discussing the types of speciation. Okay, the next, take up a fresh page. Okay, life forms interactions and biological interactions and biological associations. इस पे 2-3 सवाल पूछा हुआ है. Life forms, interactions and biological associations. How are life forms linked to one another? So we say that in ecosystems of functioning, two things matter. One is the geographical environment, which is light, which is temperature, which is water, which is soil. There's some role for winds also. There's some role for, okay, sunlight. Okay, so there are a host of environmental factors which make ecosystem functioning or life forms survive. Second is there are a host of biological factors. And the biological factors include feeding habits, it includes migrations, it includes again mating behavior, it includes metabolism and adaptations. Okay, so any ecosystem functioning, and you can link this with how life forms are distributed. Which life form is found where? The functioning and how life forms are distributed. I said there are two controls. One is the geographical environment. They're all abiotic component. Sunlight, temperature, water, soil, winds, altitudes, elevations, altitudes. Okay, so they are important factors. The second factor are the biological factors, the food habits, the mating habits, the breeding, reproductive systems, the migration habits, how they migrate. Okay, factors related to physiological functioning. How does the body function? You've heard about hibernation, you've heard about estivation, nights, the summer sleep, winter sleep and so on. These are biological factors. ठीक है? इस biological factor में this feeding is a very important factor. And most of the associations are around the feeding habits. Okay? So write down here that biological associations between life forms, biological associations between life forms are related to the feeding habits. They're related to feeding habits. They're related to positions in. They're related to positions in the trophic structure or the food webs, positions in the trophic structure and the food webs. Makes sense, no? You are a plant, you are a producer, you have some role and you have some association with the herbivore. You have some association with the rhizobium that absorbs nitrogen. You have some linkage with the fungi, the earthworms of the soil. Okay, so the ecosystems, the biological relationships that we have, okay, it's related to what the life forms eats. Carnivore, herbivore, the autotrophs and so on. Okay? Now based on this, we say there are a couple of associations. This is one way of capturing it. Okay, so this is life form A, this is life form B. Okay, if both help each other, I say plus plus, both are benefited. If one is benefited, other has no impact. Okay, zero means neutral. Okay, this is zero is neutral. Minus is negative. So it can be a positive relationship, it can be some kind of a neutral relationship, or it can be negative relationship. इसमें क्या है? Two life forms and they're harming each other. Okay, two life forms where both are neutral. They're together but not of much any benefit. Two life forms where they benefit each other. Two life forms, one benefits, other has no benefit. Two life forms, one has negative impact, other has no impact. These are the possible associations. Okay, so let me give you the names of this. ये positive को, this is called as mutualism. This is called as mutualism. So in some books they might write this as symbiosis. Okay, so one type of relationship is mutualism, also called as symbiosis. The best example of this is corals. Corals, they live with one algae called as zooxanthellae, correct? We have lichens. Lichens are again symbiosis between algae and fungi. Okay, so one type of association is mutualism, also called as symbiotic relation. Both are benefited. Okay, the coral polyps and one algae called as zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae. Okay. Lichens I mentioned, one of the indicator species also. Okay, so lichens are again a combination of algae and fungi. Okay, that's mutualism. Then this one is not impacted, the other is helped. Okay, this is called as commensalism. It's called as commensalism. Second is commensalism, which is positive neutral, where one benefits, other is neither harmed nor benefited. Neutral. Commensalism. Commensalism का best example है shark and remora, a sucker fish. Shark and remora, sucker fish. So if this is the shark, Okay, the remora fish, it attaches itself, okay, with the shark. You put attach, it's like it has some kind of, you can say claw, whatever, it can stick itself to the shark. वो parasite नहीं है, remember this. It sticks, it goes wherever the shark goes, and when shark hunts the leftovers, it can detach, eat the leftovers, and again go and park itself with the shark. ठीक है? So this is an example of commensalism. Shark is not impacted, neither helped nor harmed, but remora fish is helped. ठीक है? That's called as commensalism. लिख लिया आप लोगों ने? You must just know the name, that's all. Nothing big deal. So that's commensalism. Now, ये जो neutral है, effectively this doesn't exist. See, if two life forms, they don't help or they don't harm, फिर वो association है ही नहीं ना. So this practically ये होता नहीं है. That means some benefit, only then something can operate. This doesn't exist. Then we have this minus. Minus is competition. Minus is competition. Two tigers competing for the same deer. Okay. Two lions for the same food. Or two herbivores competing for the same grass. So both of them are impacted negatively. Okay, so competition, minus competition. Okay. Now, then we have minus positive. Minus positive का दो form होता है. Okay, it's called as predation, and we have one more form called as parasitism. Predation and parasitism. देखो आप लोग, म्यूचुअलिज्म हो गया, commensalism done, neutral doesn't exist, ignore that. Minus is competition. This happens when, remember we talked about ecological niche is less and the population is more. When the niche gets overcrowded. Okay, this happens when the niche is overcrowded. So they fight for the same food. They fight for the same ecological niche. So both are harmed. Okay. The next one is minus positive. So the fourth one is minus positive. इसका दो form है. One is called as a predation. Other is called as parasitism. Parasitism. Okay. So one feeds on the other. Difference is in predation, इसका negative है, it has to die. The lion hunts the deer must die. Okay, the crocodile hunts maybe some other animal, the other animal must die. In the predation, जो negative वाला है, it must die. It is, okay, then the other life form will eat on it. In parasitism, there is negative impact but no immediate death. In some cases, there is no death at all. There is one life form, and ticks. I hope you know what ticks are. Ticks, lice. Okay, so they feed on this. They grow on this body. They keep on taking nutrients. They take on blood. Okay, इसको मारेंगे नहीं. This is the host. The host will not die. The host will become weak maybe. The host can develop some problems maybe, but वो मरेगा नहीं. At least not immediately. That's called as parasitism. ठीक है? So a lot of ticks, lice. One good example of parasitism is one type of plants which grow on trees called as epiphytes बोलते हैं. Epiphytes. So there is a tree. There is a tree here. And the branch here on this tree, okay, you'll have another plant growing on this. So this plant takes the food from the tree. The tree survives and this also grows. We call such plants as epiphytes. epiphytes. There is one type of, so an example of this is, you can talk about orchids. Not all of them, but some types of orchids. They are epiphytes. ORCHIDS, orchids. Okay? So that's positive, negative, predation and parasitism. Now the fifth one is -0, where one negative, other is not harmed. We call this as amensalism. We call this as amensalism. So some plants, they secrete some kind of toxins, they secrete some kind of resins which can kill some other plants, but they themselves are not impacted. So this is a tree. Okay. And so they produce some kind of toxins. Because of this, the grasses can't grow here. Because of this, some other plants can't grow here. इसका best example है pine tree and grass. Pine trees and the grass. जहाँ pine trees होगा, वो grasses will not grow because the resin from or the toxin from the pine tree will allow नहीं करेगा for the grasses to grow. It will inhibit their biological function. We call this as amensalism. अच्छा. Now last couple of years में this has been in big news because linked amensalism is one type of functioning called as allelopathy. ALLELOPATHY. वो amensalism ही है. In this, they use this technique for pesticides. So they grow some type of plants, they grow some type of crops, okay, which can attract the pests and they can kill them eventually. So allelopathy is a technique that uses amensalism properties, okay, as biofertilizers. You know? Allelopathy is a technique of agriculture. A technique of agriculture where amensalism properties are used, okay, as biopesticides. They use as biopesticides. Certain plants can attract and impact harmful insects. They can attract and they can impact harmful insects. Okay? So allelopathy is used in organic farming. Allelopathy used in, yes, ये पूछा हुआ question है, correct. It is used in organic farming. All fine here? These are the associations of the life forms. Okay, how they relate to one another with some examples. Okay, I think you guys can take a 5 minutes break if you want. Okay, 10:40 by my watch. Yesterday, 2-3 of you एकदम दुख भरा नोट लिखा मुझे, सर we have serious problems और मोबाइल फोन नहीं है, लैपटॉप है तो लेके जा भी नहीं सकते. I said okay, fine. ठीक है, ऑफलाइन ऑनलाइन. Be back in 5 minutes, please. You have any doubts, you can ask me, I'll clarify. Debarga, you can share that with me. I'll have a look. Allelopathy is one type of an association where you don't use chemicals for killing the pest. The plants are grown which attract and impact the pests. Okay? Maybe let me check if you need some more details. I can give you some examples maybe. Let me check. In fact, on our current affairs section, we have a proper article on this. I'll share it with all of you. Yeah, looks good. Yes. Yeah, looks good. Very nice. Excellent. If all on the Telegram group, I just posted one write-up from our current affairs section. Okay. What is allelopathy? And discuss its role in major cropping systems in agriculture. This was the question asked in the mains. Allelopathy pe. It is used in crop management to promote weed suppression, pest control. Okay. It's used in crop rotation practices and sustainable agriculture. Okay, so maybe back in your time, you can quickly note these down. The allelochemicals are called as natural herbicides. They act as repellents, attractants. Okay, they can reduce nitrogen leaching, reduce pollution. Okay. If they promote some growth, it's called as positive allelopathy. But I am referring to largely the negative one. Yes, rice farming may they use allelopathy. You're right. In rice farming, they can use allelopathy. No, Sumaya. It is not just in invasive species. Okay, it can be part of the ecosystem itself. And we can use that property, okay, for crop management. Organic farming, crop rotation, okay, we use allelopathy. Which year तो बेटा याद नहीं है, कौन सी year ने पूछा था. When I take up the questions, maybe if I have the list with me. I'll search and get back on this. The list I have doesn't tell me immediately. Okay, I think we start now. Others can join us. The next topic is Biogeographical realms of India. Yes, Vansit. You can do that. You can do that. Okay. The next topic is biogeographical zones or biogeographical realms of India. Okay, so we divide India into some biodiversity zones based on life forms, environment conditions, based on associations. Okay, we divide India into, some books write 10 zones, others write 8 zones. Doesn't matter. We can take up the 10 zones. Okay. So ये है क्या concept? These are okay, geographical regions. They are geographical regions with definite physical conditions. When I say physical conditions, I mean climate. I also mean the terrain. I also mean the soil factors. Okay? And so these are geographical regions with a definite, okay, patterns of conditions, with definite, okay, geographical conditions of climate, terrain, soil, and the associated life forms, okay, in those locations. Geographical regions with the definite patterns of physical conditions, patterns of physical climate conditions, terrain, landscape, height, elevations, and soil, plus the associated life forms. India has tremendous diversity. Mountains हैं, coast है, island है, river regions हैं, desert regions हैं. Okay, there are dry areas, there are wet areas. So India has a very large biodiversity. ये पहला one point है. Second point is that the location of India and South Asia is a very unique. The location of India and South Asia is very unique. It has proximity with the oceans. It has proximity with Central Asian and Chinese rim. It is its proximity to the African rim. African rim. So एक तो ocean के साथ में है. Okay. So ocean element is there. India is very near Central Asia. Central Asia also has its typical life forms. It is very near the Chinese Tibetan region. तो उसका भी property आ जाता है. And it's also near the African rim across the Arabian Sea. Okay, as I said, one is I'm studying how the life forms are distributed with respect to some conditions. And I said India has good variety. Oceans, Central Asia, Chinese, Africa, and very importantly, its proximity to the unique Himalayan conditions. ऐसे mountains world में और कहीं नहीं है. The highest mountains, tropical, subtropical latitudes में, okay, some of the wettest areas of the world. So this is what creates very unique type of conditions. So Indian ka biogeography is very different from any other parts of the world. Okay. Now, we can divide India into 10 biogeographical regions or 10 biogeographical realms. Okay. So let me, don't draw right now, let me show this first. So we have something here, this part here, we have this part here, we have this like this, we have the desert region here, we have the dry area here, this is the entire Ganga region here, Ganga region like this here, we have the Ghats and the coastal region here. We have the eastern Ghats on this side here. So this is called as Trans-Himalayan region. This is the Himalayan region. This is the deserts. This is the semi-arid region. This is the Ganga. This is the Ganga. This is northeast, Western Ghats and coasts. This is the eastern coasts. This is Deccan. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we have the islands, Andaman, Nicobar. On this side we have the Lakshadweep. These are the 10 biogeographical realms or regions of India. Okay? So just a minute. Before you draw this, let me teach you something. Okay, how to draw this. So all of you pay attention here and see. I encourage this. Or GS mein ho, optionals mein ho, learn to draw a couple of Indian maps. Detailing na sahi, but at least in small depictions, draw what you can. So Kashmir you draw as a rectangle like this, and one bulge here, a small bulge here. You come down, drop down, this, okay, Sikkim. Then you rise up like this. Okay, I repeat. A small rectangular block here, this, a small one here, drop down, then go slant down like this. One mistake people make is, okay, they do this. It has to come down to maintain that shape. You drop down, Sikkim, उसके बाद में ऊपर चढ़ना है. Series of like this. A small tail here. Come down. This is, okay, Mizoram. This is Tripura. This is Meghalaya. Okay. So यहाँ पर जल्दबाजी मत करना, ठीक है? ऐसे करके कुछ भी ऐसे बना दिया, don't do that. Okay. अपना देश है, फिर थोड़ा प्यार से. So you rise up, Arunachal Pradesh. A small tail here, come down, Nagaland, Manipur. This is longer. Longer is Mizoram. And a smaller like a hook है ये Tripura है. So when people make a mistake, sir, we forget Mizoram idhar hai kidhar hai. You remember M for Myanmar and M for Mizoram. So both the M are together. ठीक है? So Mamma Mia, okay, Myanmar and Mizoram, they stay together. और बचेगा Tripura. Okay. In fact, it is Mizoram, Manipur, Myanmar. I remember this as Mamma Mia. Okay, ये तीनों साथ होना ही होना है. Okay, find your ways. That is Meghalaya here. And then you have this Bangladesh ka irregularities like this. Okay. Then you come down. There is Chilka Lake. Iske niche, somewhere here. Okay. You have to have the twin deltas of Krishna and Godavari. Important hai. This doesn't look like a regular one. There's a Chilka Lake here. And jahan par ye cut tha, isi ke niche approximately you'll have the twin delta of Krishna and Godavari like this. Okay. So Krishna, that's Godavari. The twin deltas of Krishna Godavari. Delta here. उसके बाद it's from here, इसमें इसके साथ चल रहा है. Now यहां से क्या करना है आपको? Don't go like this. You go down with a slight bulge here, and इसके नीचे you have the tip. So if you come straight like this and you keep on going like this, you'll miss the shape of India. You must come like this and then go down, go vertical down with a bulge like this. तब आपका shape maintain होगा. So it's like come slant and then go down like this. ठीक है? That's what I've done. You come slant, then you go down. You go down with a bulge. And this tip is almost just under this one here. Okay, so this is okay. This one part here. ये कुछ आपके thumb rules हैं in making India's map. Okay. So I repeat. Rectangle. Don't do this, okay? इसको करोगे तो ये फिर ऐसे बन के, okay, it becomes Mickey Mouse. Okay. So one is a rectangle here. Then you have this, a small bulge. Come down, drop down, again come down. Sikkim, you rise up. A small tail here. Nagaland, Mizoram. Okay, Mizoram is longer. This is Tripura like a hook. Meghalaya. Then you come down irregular like this. Chilka Lake. Iske niche, twin delta like this. Come down with a bulge. Under this. और यहाँ से, so approximately यहाँ तक, you rise up but not straight. You rise up with a slight bulge like this. हल्का सा bulge होगा outwards. Okay, so you come down, you rise up like a bulge here. Okay, and then यहाँ पर you have the pelican beak. Okay, Gujarat, Kutch. Then don't go straight like this. You go first towards Pakistan, like this, Jaisalmer bulge, and then you go like this. A rectangle here. Okay? I repeat. Rectangle, small bulge, come down, slant down, Sikkim, rise up, a small projection here, couple of bends. That's Mizoram, Tripura, Meghalaya, Bengal, Bangladesh, Chilka Lake, Krishna Godavari Delta. Come down with a bulge, Chennai, rise up, okay, along this line approximately. You have this, then you go here, और ये वाला part को खत्म करना with a squarish part here. Okay, so what I did was, it was side हो गया ना, इसीलिए you have to bring this इसके नीचे तक. Okay, so bring it इसके नीचे यहाँ पर. Then it look proportional. Then you go up from here like this, and the rest is fine. All good? So in 2-3 rounds back in your rooms, the diagram will be set. And in general, I recommend exam hall में, in most questions you don't need to draw the whole maps. आपको जो दिखाना है आप दिखाएं. You have to show Gujarat, you just show this much. You want to show southern India, okay, you just show this is southern India. Northeast दिखाना है, Sikkim, and that's good enough. Kashmir दिखाना है, just this part is good enough. So you learn to draw the map of India, but I don't think in most cases you will need the complete map. Like you can draw only some parts of whatever you want to show. Okay? So if you have done this, now you can try, okay, drawing this map. कहाँ गया? Yeah, this one. The 10 biogeographical regions of India. And never draw a very big map, okay? If this is your page and you have got margins, so the size of map should be approximately less than 1/4. The bigger map you draw, the more mistakes you will have. The more time you will take to fill it up. Draw small maps. So 1/4 size is a good size to cover the discussions. Okay, so draw the map, please, all of you. All done? Trans-Himalayas. This is Himalayas. Uttaranchal, Himachal, Kashmir, Jammu region. A small part is deserts. Then this is a pretty big arc here. The semi-arid regions. Okay. ये गंगा plains है. ये northeastern part है. Assam, Meghalaya. Himalayas on this side continues, East Himalayas. Okay. Narrow strip here, the Western Ghats and plains. This is Eastern Ghats along the coast. The Deccan Plateau, the islands. So I do have a map. I'll share this with you on the Telegram group. Okay, I'll share this with you. Yeah, बना लो then. If you have drawn, now take down the list of the 10 biogeographical regions of India. List le lo aap. Number one is Trans-Himalayas. Number one is Trans-Himalayas. Number two is Himalayas. Number two is Himalayas. Number three, deserts. Number three, deserts. 5, semi-arid regions. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, right? 4 semi-regions. 5 is Ganga region. 5 is Ganga. 6 is the Deccan region. This is 6. 6 is Deccan region. 7, Western Ghats and Plains, Deccan region, Western Ghats and coastal plains. 8 is Eastern Ghats. 8, Eastern Ghats. 9 is Northeast region. 9, Northeast region. And 10 is islands, Andaman Nicobar and Lakshadweep. Ganesh, we put both islands together, Andaman Nicobar and Lakshadweep. इसमें एक fact जानो आप, the largest one is Deccan. The largest, it is almost 40% of India. Deccan is the largest one. Okay. The second largest is the semi-arid region. Diagram में पता नहीं चल रहा है. I have drawn is a bit more. So the second largest is semi-arid. Approximately about 16 to 17% semi-arid है. Second largest. And the third largest, of course, is Ganga Plains. The third is Ganga Plains. And the smallest ones are the island regions. The smallest are the island regions. Okay. Now quickly about each of the regions. So what I want is हर regions का 3-4 life forms पता होना चाहिए. And most of them are endangered species or their flagship species. Lot of concerns around the conservation. For each one of them, we'll take up, say, 4 names. Start with number 1. Number 1 is the Trans-Himalayan region. The Trans-Himalayan region. Okay. This is the high altitude cold deserts of India. High altitude cold deserts of India. It includes Ladakh, okay, parts of Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh, parts of Jammu Kashmir, North Sikkim. North Sikkim also comes under Trans-Himalayas. North Sikkim and Lahul Spiti of Himachal Pradesh. Lahul, there are 2 districts. Lahul, Lahul and Spiti. यहाँ बहुत सारा construction चल रहा है, if you know about the tunnel constructions. Yeah? So, the Manali lake connectivity across Lahul, across Spiti. Okay. So, Lahul Spiti of Himachal, एकदम northern part of Himachal में, somewhere here. This is part of Trans-Himalayas. And I said, this is largely the cold deserts of India, high altitude cold deserts. Right next, they have alpine grasslands and deserts vegetation. They have alpine grasslands and desert vegetations. Okay, it's very vulnerable ecosystem. A very vulnerable ecosystem. And the main life form, one is snow leopard, है तो बहुत सारे, but two, three of them. Snow leopard. We have a black-necked crane. It also is vulnerable. Black-necked cranes. And the world's largest population of sheep and goats. The world's largest population of wild sheep and goats. Wild sheep and goats. Okay? So we have high altitude national parks. Okay, we have Pin Valley National Park, the Great Himalayan National Park. ये सब इधर ही आते हैं. Okay? High altitude national park, Leh में. We have one called as Pin Valley, P-I-N, Pin Valley. और एक है Great Himalayan National Park. Okay, they come under Trans Himalayas. Achha. Next, the Himalayan zone, the Himalayan rim, the Himalayan rim. Okay, it includes both northwestern and also northeastern Himalayas. Northwestern and northeastern Himalayas. One of the richest ecosystems of India. It is one of the richest ecosystems of India, and also one of the most threatened. One of the richest and one of the most threatened ecosystems. In fact, I'll talk about this tomorrow maybe. We have an idea called as hotspots. Okay, so ये दो hotspots हैं. The West Himalayan hotspot, and we have the East Himalaya Burma hotspot. Both of them are highly susceptible to human problems. So Himalayan rim has the two hotspots of India. India में total कितने hotspots? Anybody knows how many hotspots we have in India? Yes, officially we have 4, but now the proposal to add 2 more to this. Like I'll talk about afterwards. Yes, now we say we must consider 6 of them, not just 2. We have said Sundarbans को भी अलग रखो, plus the Terai regions भी अलग रखना चाहिए हमें. Very unique biodiversity. But as of now, just know the Himalaya has West Himalayan hotspot and the East Himalaya Burma hotspot. बोलते हैं इसको. East Himalaya Burma hotspot. Very fragile zones and very rich zones. Right next. The vegetation has great diversity. The vegetation has great diversity. It has deciduous forests. It has wet evergreen forests. Deciduous forest, wet evergreen forests. It has coniferous forests. Coniferous forest means pine trees. Coniferous forest. It has alpine grasslands. It has alpine grasslands. Generally what happens is, beyond 4,500 meters, there's more of grass. They become meadows. They have alpine grasslands. And they also have rhododendron forests. ये बहुत important indicator species है. Rhododendrons. Rhododendrons are a range of flowering plants. इसके trees भी होते हैं, small plants भी होते हैं, इसके grasses भी होते हैं. It's a category of flowering plants, or rhododendrons, and they grow at very high elevations. Okay, so Himalayas has great variety of vegetation. It has deciduous, it has evergreen forests, coniferous forest, alpine grasslands, and rhododendron. Yes, you're right. So if you know about the Valley of Flowers, suna hai aapne? Valley of Flowers is famous for rhododendrons. Border of Himachal and Uttaranchal ke yahan par, somewhere here. We have the Valley of Flowers, Hemkund Sahib, correct. This is famous for the rhododendrons. Okay? In fact, we had one report on Himalayan biodiversity. The rhododendrons' extent is now shrinking because of climate change and warm conditions. Okay, right further. The main animals, Hangul, H-A-N-G-U-L. Hangul is like a deer. It's also called as Kashmiri stag. In Kashmir, Srinagar ke paas mein, there is one national park called as Dachigam National Park. Dachigam National Park near Srinagar. And Dachigam is famous for snow leopards and this Hangul, H-A-N-G-U-L, Hangul. It's called as Kashmiri stag. It's like a deer. Hangul. Then musk deer, M-U-S-K, musk deer. Musk deer. Then it's also famous for Himalayan tars. Again, one type of a deer. Himalayan T-A-H-R. The more famous is the Nilgiri tars. Okay, but you also have Himalayan tars. Okay, we have snow leopards. Snow leopards. Ibex. Ibex is again one type of a goat. I-B-E-X. Ibex. And barals. B-A-R-A-L-S. Barals. Okay, all endangered species. Now, very interestingly, the East Himalayas, they are famous for tapins. Sorry, not tapin. It's called as takin. Sorry, not tapin. T-A-K-I-N. It's also called as the golden goats, the golden fleece goats. Takin. It is a very rare animal, like a goat, and it's considered to be the largest of the goats in the world in terms of size. Takin. Takin is the national animal of Bhutan. और काफी अभी न्यूज में था because takins were found in the Tawang Valley. It's not very common to see them. Tawang Valley in Arunachal Pradesh. T-A-K-I-N, takins. Okay, takins are considered to be auspicious. If you see takin, it's as in it's a auspicious thing. So takins, hangul, barals. Okay, you have got the musk deer, the Himalayan thars. Yes, that is the Himalayan ka main biodiversity. Next, write down. Next, write down. The desert regions. Next is desert regions. So, western Rajasthan, a rainfall less than 20 centimeters. Western Rajasthan, and the region has a rainfall less than 20 centimeters. 20 centimeters. And this area includes parts of Kutch region, and deserts of the Thar deserts, and the Thar deserts. Okay, some of the life forms here. So we have the great Indian bustard. It is a flagship, animal, a bird. Great Indian bustard. If you know about a desert national park of Jaisalmer, is primarily for conservation of the great Indian bustard. इसका एक और form है. It's called as Haubara bustard. The great Indian bustard and Haubara bustard, a subspecies. B-U-S-T-A-R-D. Okay, the bustards are flightless birds. Okay, they're found on the grasslands. They make nest on the grass. They are flightless. They are flightless birds. They're found in Maharashtra, they're found in parts of Rajasthan, Gujarat also. You also have some bustards in parts of Andhra Pradesh also. Okay, but Rajasthan, it is the state bird of Rajasthan. Okay, so bustard. Iske alawa, the other animals are a caracal, C-A-R-A-C-A-L, is one type of a cat. Caracal. ये northern plains में across Ganga plains से मिलता है, caracal. Then we have desert cats. The desert cats, caracal. Okay. And the great Indian bustard is among the critically endangered species. Among the critically endangered species. The next is the semi-arid zone, the second largest zone of India. The semi-arid zone. Okay. This is like a transition zone between the forests and the deserts. The transition zone between forests and the deserts. And this transition zone ka khasiyat ye hai, it has lot of natural lakes and wetlands. It has lot of natural lakes and wetlands. The vegetation is largely shrub forests and thorn forests. Shrub forests and thorn forests. Dry deciduous species. Dry deciduous species. Or semi-arid ka, the most important zone is the Aravalis. Aravalis is the core of the semi-arid, okay, biogeographical region. Okay. Average rainfall is around 50-60 centimeters. The average rainfall is about 50-60 centimeters. And the main animals, sambar, that, okay, again, like a deer, sambars. Then we have nilgais, sambar, nilgais. Chital, C-H-I-T-A-L, again one type of a deer, spotted deer, C-H-I-T-A-L, cheetals. Black buck, cheetals, black buck, and a lion. So Gujarat aa raha hai isme, the Gir regions. This area is important for lions. Okay, the Gir, ye likh lo, the Gir forests, GIR, Gir forests of Gujarat are the only home of Asiatic lion. Are the only home of Asiatic lion. And know this, the Kuno National Park, जिसमें कि we have relocation of cheetahs from Namibia and South Africa. The Kuno National Park belongs to the semi-arid ecosystem. Kuno National Park belongs to the semi-arid, okay, ecosystem, Western MP bordering Rajasthan. Okay. We do have tiger reserves here, but the tiger reserves here are not the richest ones in tiger. Okay. But the main ones are the, what I mentioned. Cheetal, sambar, nilgais, you have got lions. Okay. You can also add caracal. Caracal also found here. C-A-R-A-L. Caracal is like a cat. It's a nocturnal animal, nights mein. And it's also locally called as Siyagosh. S-I-Y-A-G-O-S-H. Siyagosh. Siyagosh is a Persian word for black ears. The ears are tall ears and they are black in color. Okay, it's also called as Siyagosh, one of those endangered cats of India, caracal cats. Okay, I think we have time for this much today. Tomorrow I should finish off these topics of biodiversity and maybe move on towards some conservation discussions. Yeah. A rainfall around 6 centimeters, 60-50 centimeters average rainfall. Okay. By all of you. I'll post 2-3 articles today. Okay. Make sure that you look up. Debarka, that's a wrong strategy. Okay. Nothing must be memorized. Everything. Okay. You must be focused on what are the important ones. 400 odd national park, wildlife sanctuary, how can you remember all of them? Jyotirmaya, the link has been shared. Thanks, Shivani. Okay, bye all of you. Bye.